OK. Now, earlier this week, the Chief of the British Army, General Sir Patrick Sanders, warned the British public could face being called up to fight because our military is too small.
But what would war actually look like for the UK if it were to occur?
Yeah, and was he making a genuine point, or was he actually just sort of trying to say we need more funding for the army? Let's talk to Professor Anthony Glees, security and intelligence expert at the University of Buckingham, who agrees with calls made earlier this week to prepare citizens for an outbreak of war. Good to see you this morning. I mean, is this a realistic thing to do, or is it a bit of scaremongering in a way to try and get more funding?
No, I don't think it's scaremongering at all. I think what's really important is for people to realise that it isn't scaremongering. It's predicated on a number of things happening, and it's worthwhile bearing in mind that some of those things might not happen after all. There were credible reports just a few weeks ago that Putin was either dead or dying, and people like myself repeated them and hoped they were true. They're clearly not true. But what is true is that Russia is now spending 40% of its national budget on defense. That is an enormous amount of money. So when we have General Sir Patrick saying that by 2027, we must be in a position to have an armed force that can deter Putin, if he's still there, if it is Putin, and deter Russia from attacking further countries in Europe, then we, then we have to boost our spending on our armed forces. The fundamental point is this: we have nuclear deterrence, thankfully, and they deter our enemies from hitting us with nuclear weapons because they would be obliterated if they were to do so. But that does not mean their conventional war has been ruled out. Indeed, we look at Ukraine, we can see how Putin's aggression is executed in a conventional way without the use of nuclear weapons. There's no sign that nuclear weapons would ever be used in his war with Ukraine. So it follows that we cannot rely on in the case of the UK, our Trident submarine nuclear force to keep war away, but rather that we must boost our conventional forces. And it can only be done with an element of conscription. It could be voluntary conscription for people who want to fight for this country to bring us up to 220,000 troops or thereabouts.
That, I mean, you call it voluntary conscription, certainly maybe aggressive campaigning and recruitment. But we could, if we put our effort into it and if the government put money behind it, couldn't we recruit more armed forces?
Of course. I mean, traditionally, the United Kingdom has had lots and lots of soldiers. I mean, 20 years ago, a far greater number of soldiers. When I was a schoolboy in the 1950s, we had began that decade by having over 1 million men under arms. So, of course, it can be afforded. It is a question of what our national priorities are. Now, this is an election year, and the Ministry of Defence been very quick to shoot down those people who said we've got to prepare for a conventional war in Europe. Grant Shapps has pointed to new kinds of weapons that we're developing, kind of magic laser beams to shoot drones out of the sky. Even if these happen, they're a long way off. And the time frame is much, much tighter. And it's tighter because we have a situation where Putin is not going to get out of Ukraine anytime soon. Yes, we can increase the weapons we send to Ukraine, but on present form, he's not going to get out of there. And if he's allowed to prevail in Ukraine, then he will begin to do what he's already said he was going to do, which is start to work on the post-1997 NATO members to take them out of the orbit of NATO and into Russia's orbit, to recreate the geopolitical entity that was the Soviet Union. He's saying these things. We need to take him seriously. And as I say, It is only conventional forces that can stop it. People don't like to hear it. The government in an election year doesn't want to say, look, in 3 or 4 years, we may have to start signing people up. But the defence of our country is the most important single duty of any government, including this one.